As you mentioned, you're the strategist. That's your new role. You're just a strategist. You understand strategy. You see it from a different point of view. And with strategy, because what I'm seeing in the mental health space is, and I don't know how you feel about this, that people saying AI could play a huge, be a game changer in this. I hear people saying there's no way, right? Because it can never be that human centric uh, people that we are. However, I speak to a leader that she says she learned ChatGPT from her own child because her child uses ChatGPT as a therapist. So, what is your thoughts on it? We talk about innovation and growth, man. Kind of in some challenging times because we don't want people to completely use a ChatGPT, still kind of go and call in. But I love this space because I think you may have, as a strategist, you may have had some insights maybe we don't know. What's your thoughts on it, John?
Yeah,
AI in this space.
I think AI is going to influence all of our lives, and I just don't think we all know what it will do. I am about human connection, even if it's virtually. I feel like I know you, Efrain, and we've only talked twice.
Yeah.
Like I am for human connection, um, and we both know that an AI generated answer will sometimes not be correct and best for that person because there's subtleties in language, in facial expressions, and all of
Hmm.
that. AI is not going to see that. But do I think there's a role? Yes, and I think anything that encourages people to take care of themselves. A big thing I always say to my patients is make yourself a priority in your life because when you're happy, everybody else in your circle is happier. So I'm not a get off my lawn old guy on many things. So to me, you have to change and recognize the value of things, but it's not the complete value. It's not
Yeah.
everything and anything. So
Yeah. Sharing to what you were mentioning about therapists. So, my first therapy session was actually via telehealth, and that was my first and last for some time, for some years, actually. And the only reason that I ended up going to see a therapist in person was because as I became a father, I think I told you I was adopted, I was sexually abused. So, when I became a dad and realized I'm a dad now, right? All these memories start to really come back of what it, my life was, and sometimes just kind of almost overwhelmed or feeling emotional because I'm like, I'm not going to repeat this cycle. Like, these are the things I was telling in my head. And I remember just breaking down one time, and my wife, because she became a mom, she was still in that postpartum stage, so she was seeing a therapist for that. And she sees me just break down one day. She says, "Hey, I have a session today, but it seems like you may need it more than I do."
good
And
for
sure
her.
enough, I said, "You know what?" And I'm just like you, man. I'm very transparent. I
Yeah.
like, all right, whatever. I'm going. And I tell you, I only went to her one time, but I speak about this lady like she's still my therapist to today, because she was so good. And I don't know if it's because I'm the person that loves interactions in person. I love that. But I also feel like the virtual, she just didn't care, right? She wasn't going to turn on her camera. Oh, I had something today. And it's like, well, we were scheduled for today. So all these flags already made me feel like, oh, I'm not going to do this. And I just never did it again until years later. And thank God that I did. So I love that you're in this space, and I love that you guys are finding ways for people not to have that one on, like, hey, I don't like you. I don't have to kind of say that to you. I just find someone else. That you guys give people that option, because
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think I had that option, but if I did, it would have made an easier transition, and maybe I would have kept on that lane. So
So
kudos to
I think you
that.
touch on a lot of things. I think finding the right therapist is important and having that connection. And I always tell people
Hmm.
you got to give it 2 to 3 visits, but if you don't get connected, then you're not going to get connected. And going
Hmm.
back to the way I practice medicine, you have to care. If you don't care, and
Yep.
maybe that's what I should say is another thing. If you don't care, then don't do your job. Okay.
Correct.
Um, but it's funny because I've been having this conversation that I think in larger cities where we have a greater patient load, we need some inpatient therapists as well, or sorry, in-person therapists as well, um, so people can have that option. But I do find that a lot of people connect through the virtual. But you're right; the person has to care and show that. Um,
Hmm.
Listen, we all got stuff. Like I believe everybody needs a therapist. Some people got more stuff than other, and you don't compare stuff. You don't say I had worse trauma than you and all that. We all got stuff, and I believe everybody should have therapy because there's always a low level. I didn't have the terrible issues you had, but I did have abandonment by a father, um,
Hmm.
and it made me this super intense, kind of like overly zealous father. And it wasn't until I went to therapy, and my wife would try to communicate this to me. She goes, they're going to fall and hurt themselves sometime. You can't dive across a
Hmm.
table to stop them from hurting
We
themselves.
try.
We try. And I just took that role so importantly because I didn't have that. But it started to
Yeah.
interfere, and it was almost like a codependency. And it wasn't till I saw a therapist that I learned that I need boundaries, not only for my benefit, but for my kids' benefits
Yeah.
as well. So we all got stuff, and it goes back to masculinity and what's masculine and what's not, and that's another thing unfortunately currently in our society. You like WWE, so masculinity is big strong guys who can kick your ass, uh, and uh, and that's not masculinity. Masculinity is being true, being authentic, and
Yeah.
frankly I love the Taylor Swift Travis Kelsey thing because I just see that whether it's real or not, I'm believing it, man. I think it's
Yeah.
authentic.
Same.
I think Travis seems like he's a really great guy. I had watched their podcast even before the Taylor Swift because I think those brothers are very honest and feeling and good guys. I hope they are. People disappoint you sometimes. They say never meet your heroes. I remember meeting
Yeah.
Bill Cosby when I was very young, and he was one of my heroes. And before all that stuff came out, he was a jerk. And
Yeah.
so then that stuff came out. It didn't surprise me, and I had idolized him. I
Wow.
mean, he was my hero. And I happened to be working at a store in a local mall in Vegas, and he was headlining, and he came in, and he was just a pompous jerk, and it destroyed
Mm.
me. So
I don't think I've met a celebrity. I actually don't really like. I love celebrities from afar. There's probably one or two that I'm like. I'm a big Eminem fan. I grew up loving Eminem, so that's one
I,
person that I got to go to that concert. And I
yeah,
hope that if I was to meet this guy, that he's not this asshole. Because man, from a young kid, I remember being in my room, no TV,
yeah.
listening to a radio, Eminem posters, and that was my guy, man.
I think he was an
And it,
asshole, but I think he's become a good guy. Like I
yeah,
think
yeah,
he
same. That's what I'm
realized,
thinking.
at
Yeah,
least his music says that, like
exactly. His music
being a
says that.
dad and being responsible and all that stuff. But I think he was. I'm sure you wouldn't have wanted to meet young Eminem. So
Oh man, back in my life, back when my young days, it's funny because who I am today wasn't who I was back then, and even as a man, when I was a young man and really getting my relationship, realizing that I'm completely different people, right? There was so much anger issues, and I've had to learn that being in this relationship that there were so many things I was sweeping under the rug. So back then, I don't know, man. We probably would have vibed. Me and Eminem probably would have vibed. We were kind of in that same kind of broken phase, I would say. We were both in the broken phase, and I think he had a lot of healing. Being a dad, seeing what it looked like from his point of view. Same for me. I think really being a dad really changes a lot the way we think and we maneuver. Especially my first little one was a girl, and maybe God did that purposely. He knew that I needed that girl in my life first to kind of even know how to treat a woman, right? I didn't know what that looked like. My mom was a single mom for 7 years, and I seen her in and out of relationships, but I didn't see a great man in how he treated a woman. I didn't have a father to show me how to treat a woman. So those are some of the things that I had to learn as well, man. But listen, we got to wrap up. We have to do another podcast because we could do this all
I
day.
could,
I ask you,
I
man,
could.
as you step into this next chapter, like, what do you hope your legacy actually in healthcare will be?
I think I already have one, like you said, and that's trying to protect private practice for doctors and let them feel in control and be relevant. And so you have to be big to be relevant. And we actually associated with a company that is headquartered in Florida, Unified Women's Health, who's kind of doing the same thing on a national level. And I love that. And I'm still working with that company as well as strategic advisor and all that. But then the other thing is, just making the world safe again and addressing mental health. I feel like so many of our ills in our society are due to poor mental health, and poverty. Those to me, those are like the things that we need to change. That's what we need to do to make America greater. There are some people who
Yeah.
need to be lifted up more than others, and you have to help them. And we all got stuff, like I said, we're all a little broken. You use that term, and I say that a lot. We're all a little broken, And so getting people help
Hmm.
for that, I just, again, trying to work for kindness, togetherness, appreciation. One of the things I say to my patients who have mixed race babies is I always say, you ever notice mixed race kids are beautiful? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the races are. And I say, I think that's God trying to send us a message, get over
Yeah.
ourselves. And right now we are so ethnocentric and, just so
Yeah.
closed and resentful of people who are different from us. I really don't like that. It disappoints me a lot.